Yo everybody, what's going on? This is Keegan from Kman Reviews. If you enjoyed this review, make sure you hit that like and the subscribe button. And if you have any opinions at all that you would like to share, make sure to leave them down in the comment section. The Strokes, Comedown Machine. The Strokes are an American rock band, one of the most influential and praised bands of the early to mid 2000s. Their seminal debut album, Is This It?, was critically adored, topping many Album of the Year lists for 2001, while their sophomore album, Room on Fire, was my first introduction to the band, an album I still herald to this day. However, much to my surprise, the album I was requested to cover by them was neither of those. Instead, it was arguably the band's lowest critical point, their fifth studio album, Comedown Machine, released in 2013. I say low point when I really know this album is still roughly enjoyed by a majority of fans, but just not to the same caliber as the genre-defying debut and sophomore. This album kind of fascinated me as I did my research, though. It was the band's first album to not debut in the top 3. In fact, it barely cracked the top 10. And the reason why is because the promotional cycle for this album was pretty much non-existent. They did a full media blackout. No interviews, performances, or any television appearances. So, let's not waste any more time. Let's just dive in. What are my thoughts on Comedown Machine? Let's find out as I review it track by track. We will start with the singles, with there being 2 of them. The first one being One Way Trigger, which was actually released as a free download, and I think it's pretty alright. The main melody of the track comes from this bouncy, glossy, almost plasticky keyboard melody that slowly but gradually gets ingrained into your mind while the screeching guitars and slapping of the percussion paint the groove of the song. However, let's talk about the elephant in the room, and that being Julian Casablancas' inescapable falsetto. He really soars on the climax of the chorus, and I can definitely see that glass-shattering magnitude of that falsetto being a bit of a turnoff for some people. Me personally, I grew into it pretty quickly. However, these lyrics can actually be pretty relatable about coping with trying to settle down in a relationship, reminiscing of the days of your youth back when you could sleep in until noon, but now you're an adult and have to function in society, contemplating leaving this relationship to return to that. Pretty good track. And the second and final single, All the Time, is a personal favorite of mine on the record, which is funny considering I've seen a few people dismiss this track as one of the most bottom-of-the-bin Strokes songs, and it definitely still takes from that traditional Strokes formula, the steady yet dirty bass, the scratchy cries of the guitar, and the impactful drums. What really sells this track for me, though, is the catchy melody of the chorus. I'll be humming along to that for months to come, as these lyrics seem to tackle people who live life a bit too recklessly. Sure, you'll never have enough time to do everything you want, but you're living life too fast and flying too high. Love this one. Now for the rest of the tracks. Opener Tap Out, which kicks off the record with the screeching cries of a brief guitar lick before introducing a much cleaner, softer synthetic keyboard melody to really set the track into motion. Thankfully, the guitar does return for a solo on the bridge and peeks through on the pre-chorus, which I really enjoy. And while the synth here can definitely get a bit repetitive, it's still sticky enough when paired with Julian's pillowy falsetto, much less severe of a performance than on the lead-off single. Lyrically, the track seems to be a semi-autobiographical tale of the band themselves, how they're constantly being labeled as the Is This It band, and now they want to try something new. Regardless whether or not the lyrics are true, I still think it's a great way to start off the album. Welcome to Japan opens up with a little bit of funk. It's got a very snazzy rhythm with the bass and plunky synth playing so well off each other, plus also featuring the rough guitar coming in. It's all just such a smooth instrumental, which is perfectly backed up by Julian's deeper vocal performance this time. It's buttery and works well combined with the 80s tinged instrumental, as he sings from the perspective of this man who traveled to Japan to have an affair with another woman, only for him to snap back to reality and realize he's one of the asshole cheater types he's always stereotyped himself. Really like this one. 80s Comedown Machine gives me the first true taste of mediocrity on the record. I do enjoy this electronically fluttered instrumental though. The crumbling triplet synth met by the arpeggiating plucky guitar and sandy snare is nice, but considering the only thing else that really comes in is a slight tonal change, it does leave a bit to be desired. Plus, Julian once again retains his lower register, but in a little bit of a different sense. Where Welcome to Japan felt almost sultry and confident in its execution, this one feels drawling and plodding in its pace and being almost 5 minutes long. More often than not, I just kind of wanted the song to be over. Not a favorite for me. I'll pass. 50/50 thankfully picks up the pace. This is another highlight on the record for me. It's the closest the Strokes get to punk on the album, and not even like a Green Day or Blink style of punk. I'm looking way back to more like Black Flag. It's vicious and raw. The guitar work is grimy, the skipping percussion is very pleasant, and Julian's vocals have that kind of nostalgic, bulking compression on them that borders on being cheesy, but I mean, I couldn't hate on it if I wanted to. I also love the satisfying drum rolls for the outro. It's a nice way to send off the track of this nature, and at the 2 minutes and 43 seconds that it is, it makes use of every second, and I adore it. Slow Animals certainly lives up to that first half of its name in that it is a slow track, but not slow to the point of trudging like on 80s Comedown Machine, but instead a bit more subdued, chill, and relax. The guitar work is soft while Julian's vocals almost have a feathery elegance to them. Unfortunately, the chorus explosion is probably one of the weakest and most unsatisfying ones I've heard in a while, and with that brings an intrinsic flaw of the song in the comparison to the album. It just can't physically compare to the tracks that portray themselves as louder, bolder, and more vibrant, so it's fine, but just not really a memorable track. Partners in Crime comes in with some incredibly, almost nostalgic guitar work. The strum plus the oscillating waver combo feels very early to mid-2000s, reminiscent of a band and song I cannot remember for the life of me. Aside from that little flashback I went through first listen, the track is still pretty good. It has some exciting energy, the percussion is satisfying, I love the rolling for the verses but the slapping for the pre-chorus and chorus. While Julian actually jumps all across his vocal range, unlike the majority of the album where he prefers to stick to one side. Lyrically, the song doesn't make a lick of sense, which kind of makes me think it's about going on a crazy, incomprehensible drug trip with a friend. Whether or not that's true, I still do like the song. Chances is a very relaxing, laid-back song, mainly driven by some colorful synths, melancholic guitar work, and the brittle smacks of percussion. Julian flexes both ends of his vocal range again. The falsettos have some weight to them and don't feel overwhelmingly shrill like on One Way Trigger, while the lower end has him painting a more despondent mood in his tone. Both ends have some real emotional potency to them, as these lyrics tell the story of a husband who's had enough of his wife's bratty attitude, saying he's got to take his chances with someone else. Pretty nice song here. Happy Ending is a track I can definitely see being forgotten in the grand scheme of the track list. It doesn't really do anything miraculous, at least nothing that hasn't been done on the album before, but damn it, I still thought this was a great song. I love the hollowed beeping of the synths, the faint slapping of the percussion, and while the guitar work may come off as relatively safe, I don't think it needed to be complex to be engaging. It still works here. Julian utilizes his higher register again on this track, but not nauseatingly so like on the lead-off single. Very light and simple vocal work here, and just an all-around competent track. And finally, the closer, Call It Fate, Call It Karma, which is the main track from this album that everyone seems to praise. People say it's the best song from this era of the Strokes, even one of their favorites from the band, period, and I do think it's an amazing way to end the album. It's this mystical bossa nova-inspired tune with serene guitar, calming synthetic passages, and the overall quality sounding like it was recorded underwater. It has that kind of soupy ambience to it. Julian's falsettos border uncomforting with this tone. His voice is just so whimsical, and it all makes for a fantastic closing statement. Overall, yeah, I really enjoyed this album. Sure, it can't really stand up to the band's seminal albums, but in my opinion, there wasn't too much to deserve outright derision aside from a few immemorable moments. But the vocals were well utilized, and the instrumental variations were a treat and helped to keep the record fresh. I guess the hate from this album comes from the Strokes just changing up their style, which I definitely understand being a fan of other bands who've undergone the same sort of changes, but if it works, and in this album's case, it certainly works. I'm feeling an 8 out of 10 on this album. Well guys, hope you enjoyed that review. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.